It's a very difficult skill to acquire, is judging how far a ball will pull and over what distance. The length of grass or the firmness of the lawn will have something to do with that on a given day. But Stephen Forster, a very experienced player, did that very well. Five hoops to go for Stephen Forster. Technically only 3 hoops and 2 peg outs. So yellow must go through 2 more hoops. So the one on the left of the screen and then one off the bottom of the screen, and the red ball will go through that hoop nearest to us as we look at it on the screen, and it'll come through towards us. So remembering he's on his on an anti-clockwise spiral at the moment. So he started on the top left-hand corner of the screen, went round the bottom, and is now coming down the middle. Now he's hopping up and down because he didn't want red to hit blue there, because he's got to send red down towards the next hoop if he can. And because of the way physics works, if you are hitting 2 balls with your mallet and they are lined up, the front ball will go roughly somewhere between 3 and 5 times as far as the back ball, depending on the weight of your mallet. If you can picture the little device called Newton's cradle, it's basically a set of iron or steel balls hanging on strings between 2 little rails. It's exactly the same principles of physics that's happening here in croquet. So if he wanted red further down the lawn, he could only get it down there by putting yellow a certain distance down the lawn as well. Now, he didn't want to do that in the end, because he'd moved blue away from the hoop, which would have meant that as a result of trying to get red down the lawn, yellow would go further away from blue than he had originally intended, so he wouldn't be left with an easy shot. So now he has to get yellow behind red in such a way that with his second shot he can hit it down to a position where he can knock it through the next hoop. So he must get red through the next hoop as well as yellow in the next 2 shots. So red's going to come down here. It's going to be difficult now. Red being about 5 yards from the next hoop, but he will certainly have a go. So a lot of lining up will occur now. You might have noticed that red ball curved to the left. It's because there's a lump in the lawn there. Now, not all of these lawns are as true as bowling greens, which is part of the challenge of the sport. It'd be great to play on lawns that true, but over time the ground changes and they take a lot of upkeep to keep them perfectly flat. So most croquet clubs, purely because of the amount of work and the amount of money you have to put into keeping the lawns at such a condition, just focus on consistency of grass cover and consistency of grass height, grass mowing height, and they let the lawns go effectively however they want. So almost every lawn you play on will have its own little idiosyncrasies, slight slopes over a distance. That slope that Stephen's red ball found there is probably more than slight, given how far it turned off its original line. but this particular court is notorious for that here at Canley. It is probably the hilliest court of all 12, if you like, which is why a lot of the top players like playing on it, because it presents more of a challenge than a perfectly flat croquet lawn would. Also, if they think they can read the lie of the lawn better than their opponent, that may well give them an advantage. Didn't give Stephen Forster an advantage there, unfortunately, even if he's been playing here for many years. But the net result of all that was that Stephen Forster has 23 hoops and Dwayne McCormick has 15. However, given that the red has not made all 12 of its hoops, it has only made 11 hoops, and red is not the striker's ball, so Stephen can only play yellow. The opposition, Dwayne McCormick, will have at least one more shot. So Forster will set up over here on the east boundary. Your clubhouse at Canley in the background of your shot there. Commentary booth is just above the line of the screen. Commentary balcony, I should say. It's a very impressive venue here. The largest in the southern hemisphere for croquet. 12 lawns. Each croquet lawn is 35 yards long and 28 yards wide. So it's a fair amount of lawn space if you want to build one. Roughly the same area as 2 tennis courts and surrounds. So if you happen to have a tennis club with grass courts and you're sick of tennis and you want to translate to a new sport, then think about building a croquet lawn. The only unfortunate thing about croquet is if you want to have a lawn at home and get your kids into it, it may be fantastic training for the mind and also for the body, but it's not going to make you a fortune. Croquet has so far failed to tap into the main sports sponsorship market, as many other sports, even smaller sports, have successfully done, which is a real pity. So if you win the Australian Championships, you might get a few $100s, maybe $1,000 or $2, which is not much for however many days of effort these top players put into their practice and their training throughout the year. It's not something you can make a lot of money out of. The biggest prize money for an event in Australia at the moment is an event held up in Sydney. It's called the Dixon Advisory Croquet Classic, and it's sponsored by Dixon Advisory, as you may guess, and the winner of that gets $3,000. That's an invitational event. Thankfully there are companies around who sponsor croquet still. The Australian Croquet Championships, which is coming up here at Canley in exactly a month's time. Australian Open Singles and Doubles is sponsored by a company called Parbury Consulting, who have dipped their toes into the croquet world for the first time, at least at a major event, and we're very lucky to have them there. So if you happen to be a player interested in gaining some reward other than enjoyment and prestige from one of these events, think about coming along to the Australian Open in a month's time here at Canley. Most of the players that you see in this event will be there competing, as well as a lot of others. Big events like that often draw international players as well. Probably won't be a lot for the Australian Open this year. The number of international players that come out to Australia for events is often determined on what else is happening in the international calendar at the time. So if there are other big events elsewhere in the world, some players like coming out to Australia as say a lead up to a World Championships or a World Teams event. There might be a few more coming out in the next few years purely because we have the World Championships here in 2020, and it's often a good idea to have a look at the lie of the land and do a recce of the club and the courts, see what grass the courts have here, what slopes, what hills, what wind, how firm the ground is, how solid the hoops are going to be, and also to judge the standard of play from the locals, which is certainly a good thing. Thankfully we do have some of the best players in the world, including the world number 1 here in Victoria at the moment. Top 4 croquet playing countries by far are Australia, New Zealand, the USA and the UK. UK and Ireland, Scotland, basically the home of croquet where it started only about 150 years ago, but it's certainly very popular as a backyard sport in the USA. They don't play on as big a courts as this or with as complicated rules, but as long as they play croquet, that's a good thing. Australia and New Zealand are very close behind the UK and the US as number 3 and 4 as far as amount of players go, and Australia certainly has the best croquet team in the world at the moment. Current holders of the McRobertson Shield World Teams event, and having a world number 1 of course is quite handy. So Dwayne McCormick here from South Australia may only have one more shot to save the game. He's shooting down the east boundary at red and yellow, which on the right of your screen there, about 17 yards away. So Dwayne has lined up so that he can try and make a double target out of those two. And he hits perfectly in that he snicked red on the left-hand side as we look at it, so it didn't go too far from yellow. So now when he takes his 2 shots to which he's entitled, and he takes them from wherever red ended up, which since it went off the lawn is 1 yard in lawn, he has an easy-ish start to whatever sequence of shots he's going to try and execute. Now, an interesting situation here. The black ball that Dwayne is playing is on the 11th hoop, so it only has 2 more hoops to make. The yellow, which is opposition balls on the peg, and the long and short of it is that he may use his turn to hit the yellow ball or knock the yellow ball onto the peg, and that will remove it from the game, which will give him an advantage, which means he'll be left with 2 balls and his opposition only 1. So we will see what happens. Dwayne McCormick just got back in here, so he has a chance still in this game. Stephen Forster only having made 23 of the required 26 hoops. I am very fortunate to be joined on the commentary balcony by a gentleman by the name of Robert Fletcher, who the croquet fans out there may know. He being the current world #1 croquet player, who unfortunately couldn't compete in this event due to work commitments, which is one of the challenges of running your own business. But good afternoon, Robert, or good morning, as it may be.
Good morning, Callum. Pleasure to be with you.
From the little you've seen of these players in this event, what do you think of the likely outcome of the first eights, given that Stephen Forster is a game up coming into this second last round?
Well, having only been here for about half an hour, it's probably a bit premature, but seeing as Dwayne's got a potential finishing turn here, I think it's still well in the balance, and yeah, it could be anyone's game still. Anyone's tournament still.
Mm-hmm. I note that Jim Nichols and Stephen Richards over on lawn 4, Jim Nichols being the other player in contention for this event, they're still battling away. Fairly level scores over there. Stephen Richards has made a total of 19 hoops and Jim Nichols 16. It is Stephen Richards to play now, but if Jim wins this game, he's certainly still in the running for the event. Looking at the results for the last couple of days, he's certainly had a good tournament. Not many peeling turns. Don't worry about that if you're not a croquet fanatic. It's just an interesting technical stat that's good if you have peeling turns in your game wins. But he's kept his opponent to pretty low scores and seems to be playing a very consistent tournament.
Yes, I haven't seen any of his play earlier, but looking at those results, I'd assume he's have to be shooting quite well to keep his opponents to low scores without any peeling turns or many peeling turns.
I think he'd be hard pressed here against Stephen Richards, though. Stephen Richards has returned to form in the last 18 months or so. He's a very solid player. I saw him practicing up in Canberra about a week ago and was looking very impressive. Both his long range shooting and his break play, all the short shots were going exactly as he wanted, so it's no surprise that he's in third place at the moment in this event, and he's got a good track record against a lot of these players too.
Yeah, Stephen's a very solid player when he's on, and a very, very good shot as well. And looks like he's just kept that in the court with a rush, maybe, up on lawn 4. If he has, that'll certainly go a long way towards him finishing that game off.
Well, back closer at hand, though, we have Dwayne McCormick having over-approached the 8th hoop, giving Stephen Forster another potential finishing turn here. Now, if Stephen Forster wins this game, the only chance he has of being defeated in this tournament is if he lost the following game, the last match of this championship, and if Jim Nichols wins the game against Stephen Richards we were just talking about, and the next game. Robert, do you know if there is a playoff for first place if they end up on equal game wins after the block?
Yes, there is a playoff. It was introduced a few years back. So yeah, net points don't come into play. So if 1 and 2 are on level wins, then they'll have a playoff.
Very good. I thought that might be the case, but given that it seems to change every couple of years, just wanted to make sure. Now, for those listeners who are not particularly familiar with the scoring of this event, the winner is determined by the total amount of games that you have won. So each player plays 14 games, and if you have won more games than the other players in your block, you win. Now, often in tournaments like this, the countback, if you are level on games, is to net hoops. So how many hoops you have scored in comparison to how many hoops have been scored against you. But for this tournament, for the first place at least, there is no countback. There is a tiebreaker played, which would be very interesting given the players involved. Jim Nichols did lose both of his games to Stephen Forster in this round-robin block play, one of them with a score of 26-25, which is as close as you can get in a croquet match. But unfortunately, I wasn't here to see it, so I don't know the specifics. Stephen Forster only has to get 2 more points to win this game. And he has a very good chance of doing it this turn. Up on lawn 3 we have Eric Ayling playing Kevin Beard. Eric Ayling has come through a hoop in such a way that he is hampered. He can't get a proper swing on anything, so he has called for a referee. All the referees were otherwise engaged elsewhere. So thankfully it's an untimed game, so it doesn't matter how long the referee takes to finish his lunch and get there. So Robert, asking about asking in your capacity as a top-level world player, what sort of numbers of top players would you expect to see out here in 2 years' time for the World Championships?
I'd expect to see a fairly good gathering for the very top end of it. Just on years gone by, you don't always get such a strong bottom end to the field. Like there are a lot of tend to be taken up. A lot of the places tend to be taken up with locals in terms of hemisphere.
Yep.
But yeah, generally get most of the a strong contingent from the northern hemisphere, and certainly the top 10 are definitely be in attendance, I'd say.
Very good. So given that it's an 80-person field, let's say the top 30, how many would you expect to see here? Given that some people are going to have other important family commitments or injury, illness and things like that.
Yeah, and some in the top 30 may not be playing much, and may sort of just pop up with the minimum games every now and then. So bearing that in mind, I'd probably say 20 of the top 30 would be there.
Mm-hmm. It's a pretty reasonable turnout for the other side of the world for most of them.
Yes.
All right, Stephen Forster takes
Stephen.
the game from Dwayne McCormick, 26-15, which is quite a respectable score given how much play Dwayne McCormick had there. Which puts Stephen in the box seat, or keeps Stephen in the box seat for the tournament.
That was a tidy finish from Stephen there. Didn't have any hoops beforehand, being on the final hoop, on the hoop 12, to get things together and get any control. So I really had to nail some shots early to make sure that he'd get round to the peg, and he did.
He's done very well, as usual, a very consistent player in big tournaments. Dwayne McCormick will be disappointed with the result, given how much play he had. Sometimes in events like this, if you're playing really top caliber players, if they play perfectly and you miss one or two shots, you may never score. Could be a 26-0 several times in a row if it's not your day. But he had a lot of chances there. Unfortunately, just couldn't keep the consistency up, which is a huge part of this game. Doesn't matter how much skill you've got, if you can't do the simple shots over and over and over again, then you won't become world number one. So yes. I'm told, anyway.
That's quite correct. Quite correct. Every shot's just as important as the other, because one mistake on whether it be the hardest shot on the court or the easiest, and as you said, it's fatal. So and you'll turn the innings over.
Up the top end of your screen there, you'll see Eric Ayling from Western Australia. I think he's coming up to the 8th hoop at the moment. His other partner will already having made 9 hoops. So he's got 17, and his opponent, Kevin Beard from Western Australia, has also got 17, so it's pretty level pegging there.
Yes, I'd expect to see Eric just take it around to the peg and have a spread of some description. He's got all the balls there for a tidy leave. And it's a pretty nice shot on the blue.
Looks like there's a pretty good grass cover out there on these lawns anyway this year. Often it can get quite bare in patches. Eric Ayling
just missed the dribbler.
That's the kind of shot that players of this calibre cannot afford to miss. You're not always expected to get the difficult shots, but for easy ones like that, you really must apply yourself 100% mentally, just as much as the difficult shots, which is possibly why the players in the lower end of the block are not doing so well this tournament. Eric Ayling's certainly a very capable player and has beaten most of the top players in the country at one time or another, but I'll have to do better than that if he's going to beat his current opposition.
Yes, and Eric was obviously quite frustrated, as you'd expect, because he'd played quite a nice shot beforehand that was much more difficult than the smaller shot he missed. But as Callum was saying, you really have to apply yourself to every shot, and particularly here as well on the shorter roquets, where you're not putting as much energy into the shot, because you really only want to just nudge the blue, and yeah, it can lead, particularly the 4 centre ones do run off a little bit around the hoops, so you generally have to either be aware of the slope you're travelling on, or just put a bit more energy into it and come level with the hoop, or even behind if that's what it takes to make the roquet, if you're not sure about the surface, which can be frustrating if you hadn't played in these conditions much, sort of getting used to that.
It's interesting to see how different players approach it. I mean, some on their roquets, on their shooting, hit very similar pace no matter what the distance shot. Whether they have to hit something that's 5 yards away or 25 yards away, they might all whack it or all just hit it, so it would only just make the distance. But on sloping lawns like these, especially when there's a bit of wind around, as there is today, you can see the corner flags dotted around the lawns. You really can't afford to take any chances, and the gentle shots are much more likely to go off. I remember earlier on in the game we just saw between Stephen Forster and Dwayne McCormick. Stephen Forster hit a crucial shot near the end which turned off almost a foot over only a very few yards distance, and if that kind of thing is happening to the top players in the field, then the others are really going to have to work to keep things together.
Yeah. Yes. In these conditions, you really need, as you're saying, with any sort of slope, you really need a good gentle roquet. Either that or very good croquet strokes to make sure you're not too far away or on the wrong side of a pioneer. But if you've got a good gentle roquet, then even if you do pull up a bit short, you're not going to be belting it, too far past the hoop or past the hoop at all.
Do you think the conditions may be one of the reasons why why there are less peeling turns for this 8's this year? I know that a lot of the players here aren't consistent peelers, but there have been relatively few peels done in this tournament, even for these players.
Yes. Yeah, conditions will definitely have a part to play. You can, if you start trying to do a little bit too much in these conditions, you can get caught out very quickly with the slopes around the hoops.
As Kevin Beard has here.
Yes, yeah, great example. Was he
Interestingly,
live on blue? Or?
Yes. Interestingly,
right.
he was approaching that hoop from almost straight in front, and it looked like it curved to the right as we look at the screen, which is quite strange given that right, last time I checked, was uphill there. So he's now got to do a difficult shot to come back and have another go at that hoop.
Yes, and possibly down the hill. That's a great shot. It's a great shot. Yeah, I think the other factor too, in terms of lack of peeling turns, would be, I guess, the lack of necessity too.
Yep.
Just because of the field. TPs are great, or peeling turns in general are great, but not always necessary, and players will make that judgment either before or during a match as to
whether it's a percentage play for that particular opponent in these particular conditions.
That's right.
No, indeed. I mean, although we do have some of the best players in the country here, the conditions partly determine what they're going to attempt and what they are going to keep in the bag for another day. But also there are very few players here who are playing well enough and consistently enough to have to take the all or nothing risk. Not necessarily all or nothing, but the more potentially rewarding but also potentially dangerous line of play in particular situations. Now, most of these players, certainly in the first 8's, nearly all of them have gone to World Championships and represented Australia, but there aren't any World Championship winners amongst them. So it takes the pressure off the necessity, certainly. The necessity of doing the special and spectacular.
Yeah, for sure. I think well, some of the players have proven. I mean, you know, if you're shooting well and you can set some half decent leaves, then in this field, you know, that's quite a sound strategy.
Just on a slightly unrelated topic, Canley, oh dear, Kevin Beard's done exactly what Eric Ayling did about 5 minutes ago and missed a short shot. That time he wasn't trying to hit it gently, far from it. He may have been trying to hit blue on the edge to cut it into the lawn, but I suspect it was just a plain lapse of concentration there. But gives Eric yet another chance and a relatively short shot with balls in lawn to get back into play. Now my other question I was going to ask is, Canley here has seen a lot of development around the complex in recent years. You will probably have seen various bits of machinery and work going on at the edge of your screen in the last hour or so. Do you think the amount of development and the buildings that are going on around the centre will significantly affect the wind's impact on the lawn? Because we do get some very strong winds here at Canley, strong enough to affect the travel of the ball. Do you think there's going to be much difference there?
Not so much now, I don't think, because the prevailing winds sort of all the development's been done where the prevailing winds come from. So I think we're probably not going to see much change. We certainly did from when I first started playing here. So I started playing here in 2007, and yeah, we had many more extreme windy days, and we did notice when some housing started to go up around the complex, sort of where the prevailing winds come from. It certainly made quite a difference. But yeah, not so sure about this current development, but maybe as housing sort of starts to go out beyond the fringe of Canley, I think, yeah, that'll have a bit of an impact, but that's probably a couple of years away yet.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was speaking to one of the players here who's invested in one of those houses that's going to be built probably at the top of your screen, and he's hoping that it will be there in time for the 2020 World Championship and inhabitable. So that's
excellent.
It's a vague guideline of when we might be seeing some nearby accommodation, and probably a new gate in that back fence, or a step ladder and a slide, or something like that.
Angle grinders aren't expensive.
True. Nice industrial part of Melbourne too. I'm sure you'd pick one up at Bunnings around here.
Yes.
At a reasonable price.
Yes, Sydney Tools is just down the road.
Mm-hmm. Somewhere you know well.
Yes.
On a non-croquet matter, how's business going? Given your forays into the world of civil construction in the last few years, is it worthwhile?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, business is really good. Growing. We've done a lot of growth the last 6 months or so, which is sort of directly related to me not playing croquet.
Mm-hmm. Yep, fair enough.
No, it's a good time to be in civil construction for sure. There's a lot of massive amount of infrastructure that we haven't seen for probably 30 or 40 years, and that coupled with the booming housing market.
Right
Yeah.
place, right time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Very good. And given that you haven't had a lot of croquet play, at least, or competition play in the last few months, how big a part of your life is croquet when you're not at a croquet venue? Is it constantly on the mind, or is it something that you only tune in for a certain period and then it's back to work? How does it fit?
Well, it's sort of changed at various times over the last 10 years, but I used to be quite the fanatic early on and didn't really think of much else. But yeah, particularly the last 6 to 12 months, there hasn't been much thought put to croquet while I'm away from it. But even so, the last 3 or 4 years, it's still taken up a considerable amount of my time.
Which is fantastic for a sport that you love.
Absolutely. So it's sort of changed a bit, but right now there's not a lot of thought put to it, and some of that's discipline as well, because I've got other objectives at work that I need to
Keep your mind focused on.
push. Absolutely.
Yep. So, do you think you'll be doing any more tournaments in the near future?
Yeah, I hope to play the Vic Open, Victorian Open, at just after Christmas this year. In terms of major competition, there's
Depends on what work throws at you.
Yeah. I haven't put any
Definites
firm
in the calendar.
plans down as of yet. Sort of business is sort of going through, as I mentioned before, a fairly steep growth curve, and it's sort of hard to see.
You certainly got to ride that while you've got the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's hard to see where that's going to exactly pan out. When that part of it's going to settle down, or my job keeps changing all the time, and or getting added to. So it's sort of hard to make plans away from work at the moment.
Fair enough. It's good to see that croquet's still on the horizon, though. I know a lot of people in many sports take a break for whatever reason and then can't get back to it, whether through its family commitments or work or just loss of interest. But do you think having family that play at a competitive level helps keep croquet as a constant somewhere in there, or would it make no difference to you?
Probably wouldn't make any difference to me, because I'm sort of
passionate about croquet.
Yeah,
anyway.
that's right, and I'm passionate about whatever I put my energy into. So I sort of can't help myself. And on the flip side of that, if I need to take some energy or time out of it, then I really need to, shut down from whatever. In this case, croquet, and really make sure I can focus my energies on whatever I'm doing. And at the moment,